Hello, friends. It is a cold and snowy day here in Minnesota. At least the snow has actually ended. It's just cold now and there's snow out there. But it is day 36, 75 refined. The quote of the day today, at this point, you're just used to seeing his name, Jocko Willink. Discipline equals freedom. It's one of my favorite quotes of his. It's also the book that I read. All right, so we wrapped up the book of Job today, and so we got to hear from his friend Elihu, and then God shows up, and this is where it really gets intense. So let's first wrap up with Job continuing to hold his ground. So 27 through 31, Job continues to defend his integrity, even though his friends were like, "Hey, man, I think you did something wrong," but he refuses to confess that to sins that he didn't commit. It's important because the book never teaches that he was suffering because of his personal sin. We never see that, but they keep insisting that, oh man, you must have done something. You had to have done something. You don't. This doesn't just happen to anybody. But we remember from reading in the first couple chapters that he was suffering because of the heavenly court, not because of Job's behavior. Job was continuing to long for a redeemer. Job 19:25. Earlier, he says, "I know that my Redeemer lives." But this is one of the clearest kind of Christ threads in the book of Job. I know that my Redeemer lives. So then Elihu speaks up. This is the fourth speaker. He's younger, and he kind of sits back, and he ends up rebuking everybody. He's like, I was going to stay quiet because, I'm a lot younger than you guys are, but you guys need to listen to what I have to say now. He rebukes them. His argument is different. He says that suffering is not always punishment. Sometimes it's correction. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's to draw us closer to God. But Elihu prepares the way for God to kind of come into the scene to speak. So then this is where in chapters 38 through 41, God shows up. He finally speaks, but he doesn't explain what happened. We get to see the heavenly court. Job never sees that. He doesn't understand that happened. But this is what happens. God asks these questions. Where were you when I made the earth? Can you control the sea? Can you command the morning? Can you tame Leviathan? Like, these are some of the questions that he's asking. He's basically asking, who are you? Who are you? You're nothing. That's not what he's saying. But it's not to crush Job, but it's to remind him that you don't see the whole picture. You don't know all what's going on in the background. You don't, and neither do we, right? And that's, I think, the big arc for us is that we don't know all of what's happening around us. We just get to see our little world, the little part that we're a part of. And that's the whole point. This is one of the biggest lessons in Scripture, because faith is not about trusting that everything makes sense. It's trusting God when things don't make sense, right? And I think that's really the big part of it. And here's the thing. Job repents, but he still wasn't guilty, right? And it says here in 42:3, I spoke about things I did not understand. So he repents for speaking beyond what he knows. It's not of a secret sin. God then rebukes his friends, and he says in 42:7, you have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job had. So even while Job's like, I'm sorry, God's like, no, I'm going to go to bat for you because these guys are out of line. And I would say, so his friends sound religious, right? They were wrong about God. Job in his pain was more honest, right? God restores Job, but the real victory is not the blessing. It's that Job trusted God without knowing why, without in that moment having kind of a reason to. And so that, I think, is a big lesson. There are many books written on the book of Job. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface of everything that can be kind of gleaned from the book of Job. And there's also an idea that Job's friends were taking God's name in vain because they're trying to speak on behalf of God when they didn't know what was going on. Isn't that part of what, yeah, sure, you can shout GD or yell the name of Christ when you stub your toe, and that's certainly taking God's name in vain. But couldn't speaking on his behalf, but contradicting him and lying about him, could that also be taking his name in vain? I don't know. But God restores Job, and that's part of the lesson here. And I think it's important to remember that we don't always see what's happening in the bigger picture. We can't always see the forest for the trees. And I will also say, and I started mentioning this, there are lots of books and commentaries about the book of Job. I highly recommend, if you want to dig in further into this book, this is one that I think you should dig deeper into. Lots of commentaries. Please pick them up. A lot of great authors can get into it, and I think you'd love it. So now we move on to Psalms. This is the song book of Israel. So they were used in worship, prayer, temple services. They were written over a long period of time, from Moses even through after the exile. And here are some of the authors. We'll talk about some of them. So David wrote most of them. So a lot of them are attributed to David. Then Asaph, the sons of Korah, Solomon, Moses, they're anonymous writers. Then we have the different types of psalms. We have praise, lament, like I was talking about, where they're crying out, they're sorrowful. There's prayers of thanksgiving. There's the royal psalms, wisdom psalms, and then some messianic psalms. Some of them are not overtly messianic, but they have messianic undertones. Even some of the ones that we read today will have that. And many of them cover real moments in Israel's history, especially in the life of David when he's on the run, even when they're being on the run from their enemies. So there's lots of different things. Psalm 1. So we don't know who wrote this psalm, but it is a wisdom psalm. The theme in this one is the righteous versus the wicked. There are some indirect messianic quotations here. We don't know exactly when it took place. It's not tied to a specific event. But this psalm introduces the whole book. It talks about two paths, the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked. It connects strongly to the book of Proverbs, which is the next book that we'll be reading. And we'll be covering the Psalms for the next couple of days. So a lot of these we do 1 or 2 days, sometimes 3 to get through a book. Psalms we'll be going through. It'll take a little bit of time just because of the sheer number of 150 of them, right? And Psalm 119 is the longest chapter in the whole Bible. All right, so this really sets the tone. Then we get into Psalm chapter 2, and this is probably by David. The book of Acts confirms this. This is a royal and messianic psalm. And the theme is that God's king will rule the nations. Very strong messianic tones here. Psalm 2 is clearly about the Messiah. You are my son. Today I have begotten you. It's quoted in Acts, Hebrews, and Revelation. It shows that the nations will rage, but God's chosen king will rule, pointing towards Christ. Psalm 3. This is from David. This is a lament psalm. He was fleeing from his son Absalom. We read this in 2 Samuel 15. And this is about trust during danger. There are some indirect messianic tones and themes in this one, but they are there. They're just not overt. David wrote this while his own son was trying to kill him, which is tough. It reminds us that the Psalms happen sometimes in real times of trouble and pain. Psalm 4, this is an evening prayer type of a psalm of David, once again of David. The theme is about peace and trouble, and it's a prayer for calm and distress. It shows David's habit of bringing everything to God. We talk about this often, is what does it mean to bring things to God? And we read the Psalms and we see what that looks like. It's an excellent place to get the wisdom from that. Not really messianic, but there's always something not quite explicitly or very implicitly messianic, but just being scripture all points to Christ, there's going to be some indirect messianic themes. Psalm 5, once again, is a psalm of David. The next several are psalms of David. I'm just going to look through my notes. Yeah, all of them are psalms of David. Psalm 10 is probably David. They don't know for sure, but it's probably likely from David. But yeah, so this is a morning prayer lament. I already mentioned that with Psalm 6. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Psalm 5. David asks for protection from his enemies. The theme is that God hears the righteous. And it was likely during conflict during his reign. Psalm 6, this is another prayer of lament. And it's about a cry for mercy. There's possible messianic themes here. And one of the traditional Psalms, David is overwhelmed, possibly sick, under discipline, perhaps because he was being disobedient to God. Psalm 7. This is another lament psalm. It's an appeal for justice, and there's conflict with the Cush, with Cush the Benjaminite, and the theme here is that God judges rightly. Again, indirect messianic themes, and it shows David asking God to judge between him and his enemies. Psalm 8, the theme here is it's a praise psalm, and it's God's glory, and there's strong messianic ties. We see it actually quoted in Hebrews 2, and it says, "What is a man that you remember him?" And this is applied to Christ in Hebrews. Shows humanity's role under God, in that it is perfectly fulfilled in Jesus. Wrapping it up, we just have a few left. Psalm 9, this again is Psalm of David, of praise and thanksgiving. And God judges the wicked, and it celebrates God's justice, and it was likely written after a strong victory in David's life. Psalm 10, we go back to the lament psalms. Remember, about a third of these are lament, of him crying out. And he asks, why do the wicked prosper? And again, this is likely David. And it's very similar to Job's question, what we just were kind of going through, was like, why do the wicked prosper? Why do the good suffer, the righteous suffer? This shows the same struggle, like I said, we saw in Job. Psalm 11, this is a trust type psalm. God is still on the throne. It's writing during time of danger, but David refuses to run in fear. The last two, again, are from David, and they are both lament psalms. So Psalm 12 is a lament about corruption in society, and he complains about lies and wickedness, and it feels very modern if you read that today. It's like, yeah, we can kind of feel that today. Psalm 13 is not only lament, but it also kind of leads to trust in God. How long, O Lord, is the question. And one of the most honest prayers in the Bible, David starts in despair, but he ends in trust. There's a Michael Scott meme of him on the train. I don't remember exactly what it said, but they always refer to this as David writing the Psalms, but is he on the train or is he on I don't remember. Anyways, I'll try to find the meme. It's silly. But yeah, that's all I have. So Job cries for a mediator. Psalm 2 shows the Son. Psalm 8 shows the Son of Man. Psalm 3 shows the suffering King. Psalm 13 shows trust in the darkness. What does it all do? It all points forward. Job is asking for a redeemer, and the Psalms begin to describe him. And so we're getting very, very steeped in messianic themes and these great Psalms. And so we have a few more days to get through. Excuse me as I reach for the book. So we start the Psalm today, and we'll go through. Yeah, we're in the Psalms. Let's see, today's 36, and through day 40. So the next 4 days, we're in the book of Psalms, and we begin Proverbs as we end the book of Psalms, and then we're in Proverbs for just a couple of days, and then we read a few books, Ecclesiastes, Psalms. Like I said, I mean, we're flying. We're just zipping through. That's what we have today. Hopefully you're getting something out of these, and you're kind of seeing a little bit of a breakdown of each of the Psalms. So think about, as you're going to read a Psalm, what are the themes? What are we trying to pull out of it? What are we trying to, the word is exegete from the scriptures, which is to pull out of the scriptures, versus eisegete, which is to read into it a specific thing that you're looking for. You can kind of think of it as eisegete, like this is my meaning, versus exegete, which is the broader. I'm exiting this text. I'm seeing the text and I'm pulling from what the text is actually saying versus me inserting my own meaning. But that's all I have, friends. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, hitting the notification bell, doing all the things, commenting, and we'd love to see it. All right, we will see you tomorrow.